Good afternoon, everyone. Just quick sound check. Stephanie, can you hear me in the room okay? Excellent. Okay. Thank you, everyone, for coming out. Just uh, real quick, today's presentation, today's webinar is EMF radiation, health risks and safety for children. I think it's really well timed now that everyone's going back to school, wherever school happens to be, if it's actually at the school or an increased number of people, obviously homeschooling these days. This webinar is focused mostly on at-home safety, but I did see several questions come in about safety outside of the house, so I'll be addressing that in the Q&A session. Let me just make the presentation bigger, but there we go. Okay, so to get started, quick outline for today. I'll just give a really quick intro about me and who I am for those of you who don't know. Then we'll get into the main content. And the main content's broken into a few sections. Why are children at greater risk? Issues of tech use and addiction. The known health effects that have been shown to have increased risk in children. A section on how cell phone safety standards ignore children. And then I think the most important part, and what many of you are probably tuned in for, how to protect children from EMF, especially at home. Then I'll get to the special offer that I promised all of you, and then we'll have a Q&A. And for the Q&A, several of you submitted questions in advance, so that's going, I'll get to those. And if you have questions that pop up during the session, you can just scroll down to the questions pod and type it in there. Stephanie's also in the room helping me. She works here at SYB, and she'll answer some of them in the pod as we go, and then I'll get to others later on. So with that, like I said, very quickly about me, my name is R. Blank. I'm the CEO and founder of Shield Your Body. I formerly taught on the faculty at the University of Southern California, Viterbi School of Engineering. Co-author, along with my father, Dr. Martin Blank, of Overpowered, about the known health effects of EMF. And this follows a 20-year career in software engineering. And if you're interested in more, I have a bio up on the Shield Your Body website. So now into the main topic. Why do children have a greater risk? Now, in some ways, children are small adults, but in other ways, they're actually quite different biologically, chemically, and physiologically. So let's take a couple of minutes to look at some of these critical differences that make a child more vulnerable to health risks from EMF than an adult. And a quick note, I'm about to talk about a few studies and other scientific references on the following slides and later in today's presentation. Because it's a webinar, I'm not giving you links, but there are links to all of them in the ebook that you'll be receiving after this webinar is over. So one of the key differences is that children's brains are smaller. So obviously children are smaller adults, they're smaller than adults. So that means their heads are smaller. Why does that matter? Well, for a specific dose of cell phone radiation, let's say that penetrates 3 inches into your head. In a child with a smaller head, that penetrates more deeply into the brain, exposing more of the brain to the same radiation. And you can see that illustrated here on this slide. And as I said, their skulls are thinner. This matters because bone actually provides some level of natural shielding against EMF radiation. So a thinner skull means there's less of that natural shielding in place to protect their brains. A second difference is that children's brains are wetter. They have a higher level of water content compared to an adult. This means that their brains conduct and spread EMF radiation more effectively and widely than an adult's brain, which amplifies the damage of exposure to electromagnetic fields. Next, children are growing, and they're doing it fast. What that means at the cellular level is that their cells are dividing and multiplying more rapidly. Exposure to EMF radiation, like from a cell phone or a cordless phone or Wi-Fi or any source, has been shown to damage DNA. This can lead to mutations in your genes. And these mutations are, for example, a mechanism by which diseases like cancer form. Because children are growing and their cells are dividing so rapidly, this means any mutations to their cells will be replicated and spread further throughout their bodies. And then perhaps the most obvious difference is that children are younger. What this means is that they have longer to live. So any damage that occurs as a result of exposure to EMF radiation, they're going to have to live with the impact of that for much longer. This gives more time for the damage to multiply and to spread and to impact their bodies. So I covered 4 main differences between adults and children to explain why children are more vulnerable. First, their brains are smaller and their skulls are thinner. Their brains are wetter, which helps EMF, it increases the conductivity of the electromagnetic radiation in their brains. They're growing, which increases the rate at which any negative health effects at the cellular level will be replicated throughout their body. And they're younger, so they have longer to live with the impact of any damage that occurs. So the next natural question to ask is, how much of a concern should this be? In other words, how widespread is cell phone ownership and usage among children? Well, in 2016, and again, all these stats and the links to them are in the ebook that you'll be getting, but in 2016, it was reported that the average age for kids to get their first smartphone was just over 10 years old. A 2017 report found that 45% of US children between the ages of 10 and 12 had their own smartphone with a service plan rather than just Wi-Fi, meaning they're constantly connected to cell phone networks. According to a 2019 survey, 53% of children in the United States owned a smartphone before the age of 11. That's more than half. And a similar survey released in 2020 found that 53% of UK youth have a smartphone by age 7. That's second grade. And by the time they're 11, a full 90% have smartphones. Now, that 2020 UK study had some other disturbing findings. 39% of respondents said they could not live without their phone. 57% said they always slept with their phone by their bed. 44% expressed discomfort at being in a location without cell service. And 42% explained that they are constantly worried about their battery dying. So a lot of children have cell phones. That's not a surprise, but the data backs that up. But what's most concerning, at least to me, from that last slide, is that a lot of these children are already expressing symptoms of cell phone addiction, and they're already demonstrating unhealthy habits with their technology. And that leads to increased exposure to EMF radiation. Now, keep in mind, that's just cell phones. And while cell phones are a significant source of EMF radiation, they are not the only source, not even close. In today's world, children, like all of us, are exposed to the same type of EMF radiation from multiple cell phones, cell phone towers, antennas, Wi-Fi routers, connected devices, smart cars, electric cars, hybrid cars. The sources and exposures keep growing exponentially with the growth in connected technology. So we see that children are more vulnerable to damage from smartphones, and that a lot of children are using these devices. Given those facts, what are the differences we might expect to see in negative health effects for children when compared to adults? Well, let's dive into some of the details and cover a few different sets of health effects. One effect of cell phone use that people are often worried about is brain tumors. A 2007 study published by a group led by Dr. Leonard Hardell, a very well-known scientist when it comes to EMF and health, examined the incidence of malignant brain tumors among thousands of cell phone and cordless phone users. Hardell and the researchers found not only does cell phone use increase the risk of forming malignant brain tumors, but this is key, the risk increased with latency time. How much time had passed since the cell phone exposure, as well as cumulative use. Now, going back to what I said earlier, this matters for children because children have longer to live, which means they'll have a longer latency time from any of the exposures that they have when they're a child. So the risk keeps increasing the longer you live after cell phone exposure. And that's why this is such a concerning result when it comes to demonstrating or illustrating the health risks for children. Because the risk keeps increasing with time, even if there's no more doses. And I want to emphasize these results are from supposedly safe doses within safety limits of EMF. This is monitoring exposure to legal levels of radiation emissions from cell phones. If you look at the data presented in the study, you'll see that those who began using cordless or cell phones before the age of 20 had a 400% increased risk of forming a brain tumor on the side of the head where they hold their phone. That's a 4 times increase. In other words, those who started using cell phones when they were children had a massive increased risk of forming malignant brain tumors. Of course, brain tumors aren't the only type of cancer that's linked to EMF radiation exposure. As I've mentioned, cell phones aren't the only source of EMF radiation. Among the many other sources in our lives are power lines and the electrical wiring in your home. This is because AC power emits a type of EMF called ELF, or extremely low frequency. The power lines and electrical circuitry that form our power grid also act as a massive antenna that can pick up and conduct stray EMF from other devices, like cell phones and Wi-Fi. Dr. Sam Millam coined a term to describe this: dirty electricity. Millam and his colleague, Eric Osiander, published a study showing that the appearance of childhood leukemia between the ages of 3 and 4 only appeared with the introduction of electrification. In other words, right, because the power grid in the United States, it didn't just appear overnight. It rolled out over time in different areas. And what these two researchers did was dig through the records, and they discovered that kids between the ages of 3 and 4 did not have childhood leukemia until they lived in an area that became electrified. And it was following the rollout of electrification that you started to see this disease appear in children of this age. So the trend of the appearance of childhood leukemia developing at a certain age, it's a modern one, and it followed the introduction of the power grid and a whole new set of EMF exposures in children. Another health effect that's been demonstrated in children is cognitive decline. Obviously, cancer is a very concerning risk. It's a terrifying health condition for everyone. But it's not the only class of negative health effects that have been linked to cell phone radiation exposure in children. Other research out of the University of Helsinki in Finland gives reason to suspect that children are susceptible to more subtle effects on brain function. These researchers demonstrated cognitive dysfunction in children resulting from exposure to cell phone radiation. 15 children were asked to perform auditory memory functions with and without exposure to cell phone radiation. Their findings suggest that EMF emitted by mobile phones has effects on brain responses during cognitive processing in children. In other words, exposure to cell phone radiation was shown to negatively affect brain function and cognition in the children that were studied. A related health effect that has also been researched is on the question of memory loss. A peer-reviewed study released in July 2018 suggested a link between exposure to radio frequency EMF, like you get from a cell phone, and memory performance in teens. The researchers analyzed data from nearly 700 Swiss teenagers, and they tracked the EMF exposure and memory performance of these teens over the course of an entire year. The study found that exposure for mobile phone radiation over the course of 1 year may have a negative impact on the development of memory in adolescence. In the past few years, an increasing number of studies have identified a strong correlation between ADHD, attention deficit hyperactivity disorder, and exposure to EMF radiation. In 2017, a pair of researchers surveyed the published science on this question and concluded that symptoms of retarded memory, learning, cognition, attention, and behavioral problems have been reported in numerous studies and are similarly manifested in autism and attention deficit hyperactivity disorders as a result of exposure to cell phone radiation. And then the final class of effects I'm going to cover here, with so much evidence accumulating demonstrating the links between cell phone radiation and cognitive function, memory loss, and behavioral disorders, you would expect to see an impact in overall academic performance. And in fact, that is what we find. And it's not just because of the physiological and biological effects of cell phones, it's also because they are quite simply a massive distraction. A 2017 study from Rutgers University in New Jersey found that students who used their cell phones and other devices for non-academic purposes during lectures perform worse at the end of term exams. So I've covered here 5 classes of health effects that have been demonstrated to have greater risk in children: brain tumors, childhood leukemia, cognitive function, memory loss, ADHD, and then also academic performance. Now, I just want to highlight these are some specific areas where there's actually, researchers have actually been able to perform studies into the effects on children. That doesn't mean these are the only effects. As I've said on my blog and ebooks and other webinars, there is a wide range of negative health effects linked to EMF exposure. And as I said at the start of this webinar, children are more vulnerable to those effects. So these are not the only health effects that one can expect in children from exposure to EMF. These are some that have been specifically studied to have greater risk for children. Now, I want to spend a couple of slides here just talking about cell phone safety standards. To be clear, I and many others believe that the regulations that govern cell phone radiation emissions are vastly inadequate to protect any of us from the increasing number of negative health effects that have been documented. But for the sake of argument, let's assume that cell phone emission regulations are actually sufficient to protect us. By us, I mean adults. They're not, but let's just assume that for a second. Because even if that were true, again, it's not, but even if it were, these regulations are clearly inadequate to protect children. See, in the United States and much of the rest of the world, the Federal Communications in the United States uses a measurement called SAR. And again, most of the world uses this, but in the US, the FCC is what sets the standards. And they set cell phone radiation standards around SAR levels. SAR stands for specific absorption rate. In other words, cell phone radiation is regulated based on how much radiation you absorb when you use your phone. But that's actually not true, because the SAR standards are not actually based on how much you absorb. They're based on how much radiation is absorbed by a dummy that approximates the weight of a 240-pound man. But the vast majority of children, obviously and thankfully, do not weigh 240 pounds, not even close. The average weight of an 11-year-old is just 81.5 pounds, or about 75% lighter than a SAR dummy. And as I discussed earlier, children absorb more of this radiation. In other words, not only are children more vulnerable to health risks and damage from cell phone radiation, but the cell phone radiation safety regulations are fundamentally and completely inadequate to protect children from this damage. So now we get to what I think is the most important part. Oh, I'm sorry, I skipped a slide, but that was the slide I was just talking about. Now we get to what I think is the most important part of this webinar, which is how to protect your children. while children may be more vulnerable to damage from EMF health effects, it's just as easy to protect them as it is an adult. Now, at SYB, we make some of the best EMF protection products available in the world. And so sometimes it surprises people when I tell them that the best EMF protection is free, completely free, and you can start protecting your children right now. As with any form of pollution, the absolute best protection is to reduce your exposure to the pollution in the first place. And when it comes to EMF, there are two simple rules to accomplish that goal, what I call the two key rules of EMF protection. One, minimize your use of EMF generating technology. And two, maximize the distance between your body and the EMF tech when it's in use. Minimizing your use of EMF technology is the absolute best way to protect yourself from EMF, because then you're not exposed to the radiation in the first place. Now, while minimizing your use is the best way to cut your exposure and protect your health, no matter how much we cut out the EMF, we all still need to use at least some modern technology. It's how today's world works. And that's where maximizing distance comes in. You want to maximize the distance between the EMF emitting technology and your body. Why does this matter so much? Because the power of EMF radiation diminishes exponentially with distance. That means each time you double the distance between your tech and your body, you slash the power of the exposure by 75%. So this is super important. And I'm just going to repeat that. Every time you double the distance between your body and a piece of technology, you are slashing the power of that exposure by 75%. And that's why it's so important to keep this technology as far away from you as possible. So now that I've covered the two key rules of EMF protection, I want to talk about a few ways that you can consider implementing these at home to reduce the health risks for your children. The first is to use wired networks. Of course, all of us are making increased use of the internet, and parents are using it to educate their children. It's by far the most convenient source for finding information, guidance, learning materials, and support from teachers and other parents. And for many children these days, they have to access their actual classrooms online. This means that their internet usage is increasing, and in a home with wireless connectivity, that means the Wi-Fi will stay on and be utilized for longer than usual. Now, of course, Wi-Fi is incredibly convenient. You can access all that great information from any number of devices, including a laptop, a computer, a tablet, your phone, an e-reader, even your television, from anywhere in the house without adding any new infrastructure. But Wi-Fi also has a downside, because Wi-Fi uses the same type of radiation as a cell phone, which I've been talking about throughout this webinar. So continuous exposure to Wi-Fi can be harmful to you and your children, and it can be the source of various diseases. Wi-Fi is not good for our health, but we can't quit using the internet completely either. So there's a safer way to do that. And the best alternative is using a wired internet connection with Ethernet cables. Even if you still need wireless and can just use the wired connection sometimes, that makes a difference. So using wired networks. Now, even if you can't use wired networks for whatever reason at home, that you need the Wi-Fi on in order to do your work and for your children to study and even to watch Netflix at night, at least try to turn off your Wi-Fi when you go to bed. That includes your router and the Wi-Fi on all of your wireless devices, but at least start with the router. Because if you're like most people, you don't actually use Wi-Fi at night when you and your family are asleep. But most people still keep the Wi-Fi on. It's just habit. Turning it off at night is a great way to make a huge difference in your family's EMF exposure. You think about it. You sleep, if you're supposed to sleep anyway, 7-8 hours a day. That's almost a third of your life. And if you can turn off Wi-Fi when you go to bed and your family goes to bed, you're slashing your exposure to that Wi-Fi radiation by a third. Next, getting back to one of the other, the first key rule, I'm sorry, the second key rule of EMF protection, you want to keep the Wi-Fi router as far away as possible when it is on. So if you're using Wi-Fi, keep it as far away in the house or the apartment as possible, because every inch matters and can make a really big difference in your overall exposure. Next is to exclude gadgets when possible. Parents tend to give their children high-tech gadgets like mobile phones, laptop computers, tablets at a very young age. This allows children to use these gadgets to learn new things and increase their intelligence. And it also helps distract the children and prevent them from bothering their parents too much. So these gadgets do provide value, and they can provide significant educational value. But if you're interested in exposing your child to less radiation, then use non-gadgets whenever possible. Things like books, pencils, paper, other traditional tools. Again, whenever possible. None of this has to be an all or nothing proposition. Like I said, if you still need Wi-Fi on some of the day, keep it on some of the day and turn it off when you don't need it. If your children still need to use their computers and tablets to do some work, then do that, and then exclude the gadgets when possible. Not only does this reduce your child's exposure to radiation, researchers are also finding other benefits, such as improved motor skills, improved sleep, improved cognition, and improved memory. Now, this is a really big one. Parents should not allow children under 6 to use tech gadgets, even for educational purposes. That's because ages 0 to 6 are the most important for their development, and the virtual world distracts from real-world experiences, in addition to the damage that comes from exposure to radiation emitted by these devices. It's also necessary to limit and monitor the use of tech gadgets in children who are between 6 and 12, as well as teens. One really effective way to accomplish all of these goals is to delay getting your child a smartphone. Because once they have a phone, you're largely out of control. It's much harder to regulate their device time, their screen time, once they have their own phone. In fact, there's a whole movement called Wait Until 8th, which is based around getting parents to wait until the 8th grade to get their kids their own phone. No matter what age you can push it back to, the longer you wait to get your child a phone, the less radiation from that radiation. I have a whole post with recommendations just like these designed to help you reduce your child's EMF exposure at home, especially these days when children are spending so much time at home and so much time on their devices. Now, maybe the increased distance thing, maybe that was a new fact for you, but as you saw, none of this was rocket science. There are very simple ways to reduce your exposure and your children's exposure to EMF radiation. And I want to emphasize just how effective these are. I know sometimes it can feel overwhelming with all the cell towers going up, and if you live in an apartment building, all your neighbors' Wi-Fi networks, and all these growing sources of EMF in our environment. It can feel overwhelming and it can feel hopeless at times, but it really makes a huge difference to your exposure and your child's exposure cumulatively over time by taking these steps. Turning off your Wi-Fi router at night makes a big difference. Keeping the Wi-Fi router further away in your home makes a big difference. So as obvious as these tips are when you hear them, they make a big difference. They're really powerful, and implementing them makes a difference in your child's health. And these tips are from what I call the Healthy Living Tips, the SYB Healthy Living Tips. And I've been advocating these for years because they really, even as the number of EMF sources in our environment continue to explode, it is really what you do with the tech that is closest to you and that is most in your control. It can have a huge difference on your exposure and on your health risks. So I have a lot of these tips posted at this at this URL, the link to which is also in your ebook. And I'd encourage you to spend time going through them, because really the best EMF protection is to avoid the exposures in the first place and to diminish their power when you are using this technology. Because again, I take great pride in my catalog of EMF protection products, but there is no EMF protection product that is 100% effective, especially not, against all sources at all times. And so the best protection is reducing and eliminating these exposures in the first place. Now, that said, sorry, switching slides. No matter how many of these tips you adopt, if you want to participate in the modern world, you're still going to be exposed to EMF radiation. That's just what the world is like today. And that's where good EMF protection products come in, like the ones I make and sell here at SYB. So I'm just going to take a couple of minutes now before we get to the special offer and the Q&A to walk you through a few of my products and what I mean by the role that they fill. For example, one of my healthy living tips, one of the most important actually of my healthy living tips, is to not carry your phone in your pocket. This one, again, remember the distance, as you increase the distance between you and the tech, the power of the exposure is slashed. When you carry the phone in your pocket, it's right up against your body. There is no distance. And so you're getting maximal exposure from your cell phone. So that's why not carrying your phone in your pocket is such an important behavior to adopt. But I have some customers who have no choice. For example, there are people whose jobs require them to carry their phones on them all day long. Some people don't have anywhere but their pockets to carry their phones. And that's why I make two products, my SYB 5G phone shield and my SYB 5G phone pouch. And these are designed specifically to make it safer to carry your phone in your pocket when you need to. The pouch it's a pouch, and you carry it in your phone. You just you carry your phone in it. Just place your phone inside the pouch and then carry your pouch in your pocket or on your belt. The SYB 5G phone shield is similar to the pouch, but it's designed for people who don't want to use pouches or carry their phones on their belt. So with the 5G phone shield, you just put that in your pocket between your phone and your body, and it acts as a shield to deflect radiation away from you. Since both products shield on only one side of your phone, it allows you to reduce your exposure to radiation without interfering with your cell phone signal or your battery life. And I want to point out, actually, every product you're going to see in this deck today, there's a little lab tested on 5G icon on it. And that's because I've actually gone back and tested, at this point, it's almost my entire catalog. Because when I released most of my products, 5G wasn't a thing, and the labs weren't testing for it. But obviously in the past, particularly in the past year, 5G has become much more, many more people are more aware of 5G. It is rolling out now. It's in many cities around the world. And so I have gone back, and as I said, it's almost my entire catalog at this point. I've paid to have all of my products retested against these 5G frequencies, some up to 20 gigahertz, some up to 26 gigahertz, and some up to 40 gigahertz, a few. It's harder to get the 40 gigahertz testing. So that's why I can say these products are lab tested to work on 5G. Another great product of mine is my laptop pad. And this is really useful for people who use their laptops in their laps. Now, you shouldn't use your laptop in your lap. You should always use it on a desk or a table and as far away from your body as possible. But sometimes people do use their laptops on their lap or closer to their body than is ideal. And this is especially true for many people these days, when a lot of us are working at home and in areas that were never intended or designed for work, like the sofa or a chair without a desk nearby. We make our SYB laptop pad for that exact reason. It makes it safer to use your laptop in your lap. Just place your laptop on top of the SYB laptop pad to deflect your laptop's EMF radiation and heat emissions away from your body and reproductive organs. Oh, I'm sorry, I didn't advance that slide. Now, next, another of my healthy living tips is to use speakerphone because it helps you use your phone without putting it right up against your head. Again, another really important tip. You should never hold the phone against your head. When you keep your phone further away, you're making a really big difference in your exposure. But sometimes you can't use speakerphone, like when you're in public. Or if you want to listen to music, speakerphone, or watch a movie, speakerphone isn't really good for that. Again, especially if you're in public, but even if you're at home, sharing the room with multiple people. In these cases, using a regular headset is much safer than holding the phone up to your head. But even then, the wires in a regular headset conduct some stray EMF from your phone into your ear canal, which is adjacent to your brain. That's why I make the HARD, or the headset anti-radiation device. With the HARD, you just plug it into your phone and then plug your headset into the HARD, and now all of that stray radiation is filtered out. Now, all of the previous slides, those were examples of protection that I offer from EMF from sources that you can control, like your cell phone. For instance, you shouldn't carry your phone in your pocket. You have that power, but sometimes you need to, so that's why the phone pouch. In today's world, we're increasingly surrounded by more and more sources of EMF. And while you have control over some of them, with others, you don't. So for example, an increasing number of people are having smart meters mounted on their homes. In many of these cases, people do not have the choice to opt out. The power companies require it. Although if you can opt out, I strongly recommend that you do. And that's why I make the poster frame liner. The poster frame liner allows you to turn any poster or picture frame into a powerful radiation shield that blocks up to 99.9% of EMF. This is also 5G tested. That testing was actually completed just 2 weeks ago. So this is newly 5G tested. Just put the liner in your frame behind your poster, print, or photo. It comes in multiple sizes, and it's great because it's not only effective shielding, you can put it in a place and then people won't even know it's there because all they'll see is a picture or a poster or a print, but the frame itself becomes protected. And then the final product I'm going to talk about today is the baby blanket. And again, this is great for protecting your baby from radiation that's from sources that are out of your immediate control. You just wrap your baby in the blanket to protect his or her body from the radiation in the environment. It also works great for pregnant women to protect the mother and the fetus while in utero. And you can have your baby wear the SYB baby beanie at the same time to protect his or her delicate and still forming brain against damage from EMF. So I don't want to go through my whole catalog. I'm just going through some examples of again, the best EMF protection is free. It's the free stuff that you can do. And that's where I put the emphasis. And I know several of your questions that I saw submitted in advance are about those. And it's really the best thing you can do. But there's also a role for EMF protection products. So I want to give some examples of how EMF protection products fill the function of creating of protecting you and your children from these sources of EMF radiation, even though the best protection is free. So, and I do have a whole catalog. It's growing. I think we're up to 13 products now. There are more on the way very soon. And that brings me to the special offer I have for you today. As promised, 20% off site-wide. Just go to shieldyourbody.com and you can browse the entire catalog. You can save 20% on any order of any of the products on my website. That includes the products I just talked about or any of the others that I make and sell. I also want to highlight that for those of you who don't already know, any order of my products from my website, it includes free shipping. It includes a lifetime warranty, which is the strongest warranty in my industry, and 30-day returns. I do everything I can to make this a hassle-free and risk-free decision for you. And that's why I'm making it really easy for you and your whole family to get protected today. Quick reminder before we get to the Q&A, All of you, right after this is done, the recording is done, you'll be emailed a link to the recording. That email will also have a link to download the ebook that I've been talking about through the webinar. And that has all of the links that to all of the studies and external resources that I referenced in today's webinar. So I'm about to dive into questions. Before I do, I just want to emphasize this offer expires at midnight tonight Pacific time. So that is in about 10 hours. So this offer expires in 10 hours. Anyone who's watching a recording of this webinar, this coupon code will not work for you. This is only for those of you here in the room. So I'm going to leave this up. And I see we have a good collection of questions here. So I'm going to start. Sorry, I'm switching screens around. And hold on, I haven't. Okay, so I'm going to start also with some of the ones that were submitted ahead of time. So does earthing mitigate EMF effects? If so, how often and for how long? So I actually don't know how I can post this into the room. I have a post on the, so okay, so let me start by answering the question. Yes, earthing, or sometimes called grounding, does mitigate negative effects of exposure to EMF radiation. In terms of specifically how often or how long, I don't know of any science that says that. That, you know, but it's the more you do it, I think the more of an effect it will have. I have a post on my blog that talks about. Let me see if I can just pull that up real quick. And Stephanie, I'm going to send this to you. See if you can get that posted in the room somewhere. So, and that not only talks about it, it links to science. Stephanie will try to put, but the answer is yes, earthing. Oh, and for those of you who don't know, earthing or grounding, it's really simple. All you have to do is take off your shoes and walk barefoot, but you can't do it on your floor or on pavement. You have to do it on grass or on soil or on sand. It has to be on a natural surface. And it's really a simple practice. It's a wonderful practice, feels fantastic, and it does have demonstrated positive health effects. Okay, next question is how to protect your children outside home. That is daycare, school, outside environment. There's a couple of answers there. So one, I would say the healthy living tips still matter outside the home. So for instance, not carrying, well, if you're talking about children, not giving them a phone to carry, or if they do have a phone, not carrying it in their pocket or keeping it in airplane mode as much as possible. So the healthy living tips don't just work at home. They also work outside of the home. But then, of course, outside of the home, you're exposed to more sources that aren't in your direct control. So there's two classes of responses. One is apparel. I make, right now, I make the SYB boxer briefs. I have the SYB bandana. There's also the SYB baby blanket that some people use outside in public, you know, at restaurants and cafes, at the office and on airplanes and so forth. Those can all make a difference. Then the second is seeing if, so for instance, at daycare, seeing if they can either disable Wi-Fi for part of the day or moving the Wi-Fi router maybe to another room further away from the children. And I strongly encourage people to try to make those changes in those environments. And I have a page that has a lot of resources designed to help you do that. And I'm just trying to pull up the URL real quick. And maybe Stephanie, if you can get this into the room somehow, that would be great. So yeah, you know, outside the home, clothing is going to be the most effective EMF protection product that you can use. But also when it's a place you go regularly, like you used, the questioner asked, you know, used the specific example of daycare or school. Those are places where you can try to get the institution to make changes, maybe not get rid of the EMF, but maybe reduce the strength of it or reduce the duration of the exposures. And I really encourage people to try to make those changes in those environments. Next question, are solar panels above the ceiling or roof of a child's bedroom causing harm to the child in the bedroom below? So solar panels are a source of EMF radiation. So is essentially any electrical wiring. And obviously there's wiring connected to solar panels. I will say when it comes to solar power systems, it's the inverters, the things that turn DC direct current into AC or alternating current. Those tend to be the most significant sources of EMF in a solar power system. Now, in terms of how much radiation the panel is emitting, I can't say that for sure. That's a great example of why I encourage people to learn how to do EMF testing themselves. And you can do it with a meter this costs about $150. It's the Tri-Field TF2, but there's several. I recommend several meters. If you go to shieldyourbody.com/test, and you can download an ebook from there. I recommend several meters. I give tips and tricks for how to use them and to optimize the results. And that's really what will tell you how much radiation is coming from a specific source and in a specific area. Another questioner asked, do the smart dots stickers work? So I've seen these. I know some people who use these, and I've seen them for sale in places like Amazon. I've never seen any science that demonstrate that these products work. I am not aware of any science that could possibly explain how they do work. So that is because I get that question a lot, you might imagine. That's why I don't make, if a product that simple to use, you just put a little dot on your phone and it makes it safer. If that were real, I would be selling them. I guarantee you. So I've never seen any science to support the product claims, and I'm not aware of any science that could possibly explain the functionality of those products. Another questioner asks, is it safe to turn off circuit breakers every night? I heard that you have to get switch duty rated breakers. Otherwise, in rare occasions, a fire can start. I would like to turn off the breakers to my kids' room so their bodies can rest heal well at night. And then the second part of the question, does the inverse square law apply to dirty electricity? Okay, a couple of great questions. So I'm not an electrician. So the question about whether you need switch duty rated breakers or not, bring it to an electrician. It doesn't even need to be one who's familiar with EMF. Any electrician would be able to guide you in terms of that type of safety question. But I will say it's a really great idea. Kill switches that remove power from an entire room or entire wing of your house. Those are a fantastic way to really make a big cut in the radiation exposure. And again, it's while you sleep, which is, like I said earlier, it's a very big part of your day, but which I didn't say, and which this questioner hinted at, it's a very important time of day, because not only is it a big chunk of the day, it's a chunk of the day when your body is resting, when it's rejuvenating, when it is healing, and when it is preparing you for the next day. So it's a really important time of day. So these changes that you can make, and it's another example, by the way, of cutting out EMF radiation when you're not getting any benefit from it. When you're asleep at night, I mean, depending, I guess, on what things you have in your bedroom, but most people, they don't need their outlets in their room to be working when they're asleep at night. And so there's no, but the wiring in your wall and anything you have plugged in, that's all going to be a source of at least some EMF radiation. So why expose yourself to it if you're not getting any benefit from it? And that's why I think it's such a great idea to install the breakers that would allow you to turn off the power to your child's room. Now, the second question, does the inverse square law apply to dirty electricity? The answer is yes, it does. It applies to all EMF. Next question, in a child's bedroom, should all electrical devices be unplugged at night or just those by the bed? So I'd say the question I just answered right before this is an even better solution because it actually cuts all of the electricity even to the electrical wiring in the walls. But if you don't do that, Unplugging electrical devices will be beneficial. It'll be the ones closest to the bed it's most beneficial, again, because the power of the exposure diminishes exponentially with distance. So the closer these things are to the bed, the greater the power from that exposure. So, but as many as you can unplug, the better it'll be. Do products that shield your child or anyone else from EMF radiation actually cause Wi-Fi to increase its signal to connect to wireless devices, thereby causing more exposure to radiation? So, great question. To my knowledge, okay, so the question is, I've heard questions like this before, and they're more commonly about cell phones, because when you obstruct a cell phone's ability to establish a connection to a cell tower, the phone will compensate by broadcasting with more power. And that's why you may have heard that your phone emits more power when you have fewer bars. And that's because when you have fewer bars, the connection isn't as good. The phone compensates by emitting a greater level of power to try to make that connection. And so that's why, for instance, because the phone pouch I was just looking back actually at some emails. I was designing the phone pouch 5 years ago. It was actually 5 years ago, exactly. I was designing the phone pouch, and that's why I designed the phone pouch to shield on one side only. So it's the shielded side sits between your phone and your body, but it doesn't. The unshielded side allows your phone to keep communicating. If you fully shield or shield too much, then yes, you will cause the phone to emit a greater level of power, and that can have unpredictable results in terms of what the actual exposure is, even if there's shielding in place. I hope that, but the question was actually more about Wi-Fi, and when it comes to the Wi-Fi router, I don't believe that is as true. But when it comes to Wi-Fi devices, so like a tablet, right, for example, yes, it would. So that's why you don't want to fully wrap your wireless devices in shielding. If that's your goal, turn it into airplane mode, because that'll cut out the EMF emissions, and you don't have to worry about accidentally increasing the power of the emission, draining the battery, and so forth. So this is a great question. It's a little long, so bear with me. This person says, I have so many questions, but most pressing now has to do with a 7-year-old I'll be homeschooling next month. She wants a cell phone in the worst way. She's getting responses from her mom like, no, you can't even read yet, and too expensive. When I told her that they are dangerous for children because they emit radiation, it really got her attention, and she asked, what's radiation? So she deserves an honest answer in terms that she is likely to understand. Any suggestions on how I might enlighten her, please? Thanks so much. I love that question, and I love that that story. And it's heartening that you were able to get through in that way. So I have a set of resources, and Stephanie may have posted them already in answer to one of the other questions. But if you go to shieldyourbody.com/advocacy, there I have a whole bunch of resources designed specifically at explaining EMF radiation, EMF health effects, and EMF safety tactics to a whole wide range. Now, it wasn't designed for children, and now you've got me thinking, but it is designed to be not complicated. It's designed specifically to make it easy and unintimidating and non-complex to explain and express these issues to a wide audience. So I bet you'd be able to use those materials to communicate with your child. And so there's ebooks, there's videos, short, like 5-7 minute videos, there's infographics, things that make this stuff really easy to explain and digest. And I would love it if you emailed in. Our email is hello@shieldyourbody.com. Once you've tried that, I would love to hear what your experience was, because again, after reading your question, it made me start thinking of ways of sculpting materials specifically for children, because that is a great idea. Let's see. So are there any, let me switch back to the room. There are some more questions that were submitted ahead of time, but let's see. I'm trying to look for ones that Stephanie hasn't answered yet. So Sai asks, does airplane mode the same as turn off the phone in terms of protection from EMF? Would Wi-Fi still, so let me click start answering. Would Wi-Fi still be better than having LTE on the phone? Okay, two questions there. So does turning off, does enabling airplane mode have the same effect as turning off the phone in terms of reducing EMF? Not entirely, but a lot. So when you put your phone into airplane mode, you're turning off all of the wireless signals. And it depends on your phone how many there are, right? Because there's the cell phone connection, there's the cell data connection, there's the Wi-Fi connection, there's the Bluetooth, there's the GPS, there's the NFC, which is used for things like Apple Pay and Samsung Pay. And on some new phones, there's wireless charging. So when you turn your phone into airplane mode and you disable all of the wireless connections, you are totally slashing the emissions from the device. And I often use my phone in airplane mode. So for instance, when I go on a walk, I'll listen to podcasts. I'll download those podcasts in advance and then put my phone into airplane mode when I'm walking. Now, when you fully turn your phone off, you will get an incremental increase in the reduction from the EMF because just the power running from your battery to the circuits in the phone and so forth, it does create a low level of EMF. And I don't want to, I mean, if you want to eliminate EMF, then you'll definitely want to turn it off fully. But I strongly recommend people use airplane mode because that makes such a massive reduction. Now, would Wi-Fi still be better than having LTE? The answer there is yes. A lot of phones these days on iPhone, I think it's called Control Center. I'm not sure what it's called on Android, but it's the same sort of thing where you can discreetly turn these things on and off. And actually, is my keyboard working? No, it is not, of course. Let me pull up, there's a post I have that I want to share an answer to this, in answer to this question. Here it is. So I'm going to go back to the room and post a comment. So the reason I'm saying that when airplane mode, yes, you can turn off all of the connections, but you can also use airplane mode with a little more just control. So you can, for example, turn your phone into airplane mode, but then turn on the Wi-Fi. So your cell connection isn't working, but your Wi-Fi connection is. And why does that matter? Because Wi-Fi is designed to communicate. It depends on, a few factors, but, basically within the range of your house. Your Wi-Fi network doesn't go too far beyond your house. Whereas a cell tower, in order to communicate with the cell tower, your phone has to be able to communicate over a mile or several miles. And so the power, when your phone is communicating over a cell connection, it is emitting much more power than when it is communicating over Wi-Fi. So yes, Wi-Fi is a better option than having LTE on the phone. Okay, so thank you, Sai. Sai also asks if I have an EMF meter. Oh, Stephanie already answered that. So yeah, there's an ebook at shieldyourbody.com/test, and you download the ebook for free. I believe there's 3 meters I recommend, 3 meters I recommend against, and then 3 meters if you are interested in starting to measure some of the 5G frequencies that are being deployed. And then again, it also includes tips on how to use your meter. Thank you. Sai asks, how is the HARD different from using, so the headset anti-radiation device, this little thing that I talked about earlier, how is that different from using a ferrite bead on the headset? The answer is, Sai, I've never seen any science demonstrating that ferrite beads work. I'm not saying they don't. I'm just saying I've never seen any science. So the principle, based off of what ferrite bead claims are, or the claims I've seen made about ferrite beads, it's a very similar technology, but the HARD, a very similar functionality, I should say. But the HARD has been laboratory tested. So I know it works. Thank you. Melissa asked, does the poster for shield only block RF? Are there any products that block dirty electricity? So the poster shield is lab tested to block RF, radio frequency. It's harder for me to get the magnetic field testing done in the lab, but when you test it with your own meters, you'll see that it also blocks against low frequency magnetic fields. It does not, none of my products, to my knowledge, none of my products block against low frequency electric fields. Now, when you ask, are there any products that block dirty electricity? That's a bit of a more complicated question. So dirty electricity is a few things. Dirty electricity comes in the low frequency voltage variation. So, you know, when you plug in all of these different, because the whole grid is in effect, the whole grid is tied together. And so your toaster will affect it, in a little way, the it's connected to New York City. I'm assuming you're not in New York City, so I use that as an example. But, a toaster plugged in Los Angeles is in effect connected over a long distance, but to the electrical wiring in an apartment in New York City. And, that's just one toaster and one apartment. So you take all of that together and you're talking about billions of electrical appliances. And each time, you turn on the toaster, or each time you turn on the TV, or each time you turn on a light, it sends these variations, these fluctuations into the grid. And that's part of dirty electricity. And those will be in low frequency. Another part of dirty electricity comes from the fact that the grid is also basically a big antenna. And so it'll intercept some Wi-Fi signals. It'll intercept some cell phone signals. It'll intercept some Bluetooth and so forth. And it'll conduct it. And so those are higher frequency voltage transients. And so when you talk about dirty electricity, it's those, at least the way I look at the term. And actually, now that we're talking about it, I want to, I have a post that goes into this. Here it is. I'm going to paste it into the room. So it's shieldyourbody.com/dirty-electricity. And that explains both of those components of dirty electricity. Now, to block dirty electricity specifically, there are products that do that. One I recommend, the post actually talks, I think, about two of them, but one I tend to recommend are the Stetzer filters, which are made by Stetzer Electric. You can buy them online. You can probably also get them on Amazon. And those are great at filtering out dirty electricity from your home's power system. Now, when it comes to my products, they can work to filter out the radio frequency, so those higher, like the stray wireless signals that are a component of dirty electricity. And they can also help shield against some of the low frequency magnetic. They're not designed specifically for dirty electricity, but they'll work on those components of dirty electricity. Again, I'd recommend this post on my site as a good place. There's a bunch of information there. I hope I answered your question. Oh. Okay. So DipD, I hope I'm saying that right. Does a grounding mat help in reducing EMF exposure from laptops? This is hard. And this is actually, this ties into one of the reasons I haven't made any grounding products. I almost did. We had production ready. We had production prototype of a grounding yoga mat. I was really excited about that product. And then I just decided I wasn't, so there's the issue. Okay, let me sip. I'm sorry, I'm jumping off. It's a complex topic. When I talked earlier about grounding, in answer to one of the other questions, I talked about taking off your shoes and walking on the beach or in a park, barefoot, on grass, on soil, on sand. I wholeheartedly and unreservedly endorse that type of grounding. Now, there's another class of products that are grounding products that help you do grounding, in your home. And the way that most of those work is by plugging into your outlet, into the third prong, the ground prong of your outlet. In the US, it's the little circular one that's beneath the two prongs. Around the world, it looks a little different. Now, when you do that, you're actually creating a two-way channel. So the theory is, let me explain the theory. So let's say you have a floor mat on your desk. It's a grounding floor mat, and you plug it into the ground in your outlet, and it should help to perform grounding on your body and discharge it through the ground wire in your home grid. The problem is that you've actually created a bidirectional connection there. So not only are you grounding yourself, but you're creating a conduit for the dirty electricity from your home's wiring system right into your body. And so I believe that there's research that basically supports what I've just said, but hasn't gone that far to really do a comparison of does the grounding outweigh the conveyance of the dirty electricity? When is it smart? When's it not? So in general, I just advise people not to use grounding unless they can ground into the actual earth. If you can ground into the actual earth, then you should do it. And if not, if you want to do it. But I don't recommend it. And I hope, but let me try to also give a more direct answer to Dipti. Does grounding mat help in reducing EMF exposure from laptops? Grounding doesn't help reduce your exposure to EMF. Grounding helps discharge some of the ionization that can occur as a result of EMF exposure. So it doesn't actually reduce your exposure. It can help mitigate some of the potential health effects. So I hope that answers your question. Thank you, Dipti. Dipti asks also, do you recommend the blue light shielding glasses for kids when they watch TV screens or on tablets? How effective are they? I do recommend them. I don't know of studies that show their efficacy, but I know anecdotally, people I know who use them really like them. The effects I've been told about and that I've seen written about really relate more directly to circadian rhythms and your ability then to fall asleep at night, or also eye strain. So they help you, for especially the older you get, they help you work on your computer more without your eyes getting tired. And they also have been reported to improve one's ability to fall asleep at night. The science makes sense. I haven't seen a whole lot of studies, though, that say how effective they are, but I certainly don't recommend against them. Thank you, Dipti. Okay, Alexandra Gann asks, are headphones which go over the ears better than the earphones which go inside the ear? How do they compare with air tubes? Okay, so headphones that go over the ear better than earphones that go in the ear. That I don't know. Okay, so I will say there are some headphones that go over the ears, well, like the ones I'm using right now, but not this. I mean, this style, but that also have power. So maybe noise canceling, and they take a battery, or they're powered off of USB or something like that. Those are creating a source of EMF right there in the headphone. These aren't those. These are just regular over-the-ear headphones. Now, are they better than earphones that go inside the ear? I am using this because of sound quality. These create better sound quality, not because they're safer than in-ear or not. I do believe that headphones that go inside the ear, it's easier for those to cause damage to your eardrum, but that's probably not what you're asking about because this webinar is about EMF. So how do they? So I can't say whether one is better than the other. It'll probably depend more on other factors, like if it's connected to a cell phone, how much radiation that cell phone is emitting at that point in time, rather than whether it's an in-ear or over-ear headphone. Now, how do they compare with air tube headphones? A headphone that's plugged into the heart, similar to the air tube. So with the air tubes, I'm sorry, my desk is very delicately organized for this webinar. Hold on, I'm going to try to pull these out without unplugging anything important. Okay. So these are my air tubes. And you can see, right, so the air tubes, at least most air tubes, including my air tubes, they have regular, they're the same as a regular headset for most of it. And then there's a point at which the sound gets converted. And so from here on up, it's filled with air. There's no wire. And the reason that matters is because the wire conducts EMF and the air does not. And so when you wear a pair of, and I can take this off, when you wear a pair of air tubes, the radiation, the stray radiation from your phone does not reach your ear canal. So that's why air tubes are safer than standard headsets. So I want to be clear, don't avoid standard headsets. If you can, if the choice is between holding the phone up to your head or using a standard headset, use a standard headset. But using air tubes, or even better, using the hard, that is better than using a standard headset, because it's not conducting that stray radiation directly into your ear canal. Another reason why, so the ear canal, why that matters, two reasons. One, it's obviously it's really close to your brain, and you want to protect your brain. But also, the ear canal is one of the parts of your brain, of your head, that has no natural shielding, right? Because there's a hole. There's a hole that goes from your ear to your brain. There's a hole in the skull, and that creates a hole in that natural level of EMF shielding that your skull gives you. So that's why you want to keep as much radiation away from there as possible. I hope that was a good answer, Alexandra. Thank you for asking. Noel asked, what happened to the product that was worn around the neck? Do you not sell them now? I don't believe I ever sold a product like the one product I have like that, which I'm not sure if you're asking, but it's the bandana, which you can wear around your neck. Those are in production now. That is those are made in Canada, and our factory that makes them also makes PPE. And so it's been a little, obviously that's a very high priority item right now. And so we've unfortunately not been able to produce them as quickly as possible, but those are in production right now. We expect to have them back in stock soon. Thank you, Noel. Linda asks, are there necklaces or crystals that protect against EMF, orgone, tourmaline, shungite? I know people who, I'm going to try to answer this as clearly and honestly as I can. I have not seen any science to support the claims of those crystals. That said, I know people who use them and who express to me that symptoms of particularly EHS or electrosensitivity are reduced. And so I say, if you use it and it works for you, keep on using it. But I have not seen any science that would support those claims. Thank you, Linda. Dipti asks, do shungite tiles on cell phones work in blocking EMF from phones? I'm a little skeptical. I don't know what that is, but I think maybe I sort of answered that question. I don't know what a shungite tile is. I know there's shungite, but I've never seen that in a tile form for a cell phone. So I guess I don't know exactly what you're asking, but in general, any little thing that you stick to a phone that's supposed to make it safe to use, I don't believe it. I certainly haven't seen any science to support it. At least the products I've seen and evaluated. Thank you, Dipti. Okay, Susan asked a good question. I'm not sure if I have an answer, but let me read it. What router can you recommend that has both Ethernet and Wi-Fi, but Wi-Fi can be selectively turned off while keeping Ethernet active? I don't know. I'm not really on top of the routers that are on the market right now. It's my understanding that most routers have that functionality, but it's not necessarily a button that you can press on the router itself. That it's like you need to load up, the whatever it is, open your browser and go to 192.168.00 and load the control panel for your router to do that. So I don't know. Stephanie, that might be a good topic. I don't know if you can make a note for the blog, you know, a review of Wi-Fi routers that make it easy to do this sort of thing. Yeah, so, but my understanding is most routers, you can turn off Wi-Fi and keep Ethernet active, but you probably have to do it at the software level. I'm not aware of any that have like a physical switch that allow you to do that. Now, the second question, to what extent do you recommend using a phone shield or phone pouch when a device is on airplane mode? So I don't view it as critical. You know, I was thinking about this because I was giving you the example of how I put my phone in airplane mode when I go out walking. And even when I do that, I use my 5G phone shield. And I was thinking today to myself, this is a little irrational. I don't know why I'm doing this, but I do it. But I don't think it's critical to do that. I don't even know if it brings any added value to do that. Once you've turned your phone into full airplane mode, the amount of EMF that's coming from it, you probably can't even measure it with any of these, you know, any of these meters that you'd have. So airplane mode is definitely the best thing you can do. And if you're doing that, I don't think you need any other protection products. Thank you, Susan. Dipti asked if there are any low radiation phones on the market if a child absolutely demands one. You know, no. I mean, there's some phones that emit less than others, but I don't trust the ratings that come off of these things. So, because this is one of the problems with SAR, the way SAR is done. I have a post, a video, an infographic that explains this, but it's all anytime you see a SAR value from a phone, that's all self-reported by the company. And whenever you have third parties do the testing, it always comes in higher. So I don't believe the SAR values of phones. Now, I do have a couple of things I can say, though, that might be a little more practical. One is I did see, I don't know how this went or if it's still going, but there was a crowdfunding campaign on like Indiegogo or Kickstarter or something for a company that's trying to build a low EMF phone. That's specifically their goal. And that's how they're branding it and marketing it. So you might want to search on Kickstarter or Indiegogo for a low EMF phone, see if that project worked. But the other thing I can say is if a child absolutely demands one, get one with as few features as possible. So, you know, because I do know that they make phones that only are a phone. That aren't also Wi-Fi and Bluetooth and all this other stuff. They're just a phone. And there's even some where you can just program in, you know, a few key numbers. There's only a few buttons on the phone. And, you know, if you hit 1, you'll call mom. You hit 2, you'll call dad. If you hit 3, I don't know what grandparents. But the fewer connections a phone has and the fewer features a phone has, the fewer connections it's likely to have. The fewer connections the phone has, the less EMF it's going to emit. So that's my answer, Dipti. Thank you. Sharon asked for the best way to protect children who must go to school online. Well, again, you know, if you can switch to wired connections, that's going to really, instead of Wi-Fi, that's going to make a big difference. I have another webinar I've done on laptops and computer safety, but that has a bunch of these tips. But one is let's assume, I don't know for sure, but let's assume your kid has a laptop. Keep the laptop as far away from them as possible when they're at school online. So this could mean getting, like I have here, sorry, it's plugged in, so I have to, but I have an external keyboard and I have an external trackball. Can you see? And when you use devices like these, you can keep the laptop further away. The further away the laptop is, the lower the power of the exposure that the child is getting. So using wired connections when possible and using these external peripherals, a keyboard and a mouse, will allow you to keep the computer or the laptop further away. That'll make a big difference. That's what I would recommend. Thank you, Sharon. Sai asks, are your products shielding against EMF, all EMF, including radio frequency, low frequency magnetic, low frequency electric? So my products are lab tested to shield against radio frequency. They also shield against low frequency magnetic, but I don't have lab testing for that, at least not yet. But if you test it yourself with a meter, you'll see that they do. In terms of low frequency electric, no, none of my products shield against low frequency electric fields. And in fact, when you look at companies like mine, I mean, that sell products like, there's no company like mine, but when you see other companies that sell products like mine, none of them are going to shield against low frequency electric as well. It's much more complicated. It requires, in almost all instances I've seen, it requires grounding. And so my products shield against radio frequency and low frequency magnetic, not low frequency electric. Thank you, Sai. Susan asks, how do we find a smart meter located on the outside of our home? Maybe I'm not understanding the question fully, but the smart meter is the thing that communicates with, it's where all the power comes into your house, because all the power comes in through a meter. And so you would know where that's mounted. On most homes, it'll be, probably outside the garage, or if you have a little alley, because in the olden days, 5 years ago, before smart meters, the utility company had to send people out to read these devices. So they were in places that were easier, generally located in places that are easier for the power company to come read. So that's where you would see the smart meter. Thank you, Susan. Christine has a link to, I guess, an interview with Ollie Johansson, very well-known and accomplished scientist in EMF health effects. So for those of you interested, her link is right there. Let's see, the final question here. Oh, okay, I see. Christine is asking about the stat I had from the Hardell study, where there's a 400% increase in the risk of forming ipsilateral malignant tumors. Christine, the link to that study is in the ebook that you're going to get as soon as this recording is done. So as soon as this recording is done, all of you are getting an email with a link to the archive, and then also including a link to the ebook. So the link to that that statistic is in there. Thank you, Christine. Sai says he submitted some questions beforehand that I didn't get to. So sorry about that. I jumped back and forth, but let's see. Oh, okay. I think I know what question you're talking about here. So Sai, let me see if I can find it. Or, well, even if I can't. Oh, I think this is probably it. Do products that shield your child or anyone from EMF radiation actually cause Wi-Fi to increase? Oh, wait, no. I think I answered that one. I answered that question. Maybe there's another question I missed. But okay, so you're asking here, I have questions regarding the blanket phone shield, laptop shield. Does it end up reflecting the EMF directly to the opposite or other directions? The answer is yes, it does. That's how shielding works. It deflects the radiation in the opposite direction. But it's important that you have to remember that the power of EMF radiation diminishes exponentially with distance. So it doesn't just keep bouncing around infinitely. When you deflect it away, it continues diminishing in power. So it doesn't just create this, I mean, you don't want to fully shield the whole room and then have a source of EMF, in the middle of the room, because then it'll, be bouncing around. But yes, shielding works by deflecting the radiation in the opposite direction, just like a mirror deflects light. And but it shouldn't result in the situation that I understand in your question. Thank you, Sai. Noel, I'm sorry, I don't know if it's Noel or Noel. How does the product for the photo frame protect you from the smart meter? So the picture, well, I have two products, right? So there's the picture frame, and then there's the poster frame liner. The picture frame really isn't meant for smart meters, largely because of its size. Because of its size, it's great for people who sleep with their phones. So it's great for end tables and nightstands. It's great for cordless phones. It's great also for some Wi-Fi routers. That's really where the picture frame comes in. The poster frame liner is the one that is good for smart meters. And so what you want to do, and we have, sorry, I'm trying to pull up a link here. Give me 1 second, please. So what you want to do is get as big a size as you can. I mean, it comes in 24 by 36. You know, not everyone can have that full size up, but get as big a size as you can, and then you put it on the wall. And so I just posted a link to a post on my site that explains this. You put it up on the wall inside. So if you have the smart meter here on a wall, you have the wall, you put the poster frame liner up here, and it'll deflect the wireless radiation from your smart meter away from your house. But again, I think this post does a much better job explaining it than I just did. But thank you. That's a really good question. I mean, that's why we have the post up. Thank you. Stephanie, I don't know which question you're talking about, so I need a little more guidance there. Okay. Do you need to wrap, Sai asked, do you need to wrap the blanket around the babies to make it work? As you can imagine, the baby moves the blanket a lot. I mean, ideally, you want to wrap the baby in the blanket. That'll give you the most protection. Yes, because, I mean, all of my apparel products, the more of your, the same is true for the bandana as it is for the baby blanket. As the more of your body that you cover with the apparel product, the more of your body is protected. So that's a great question, Sai. Thank you. Oh, okay. There's still quite a lot of you in the room, but the rate of questions has slowed. So I'm just going to pop back up here and remind everyone that there's the special sale to thank you for all turning out to listen to me talk. It's through tonight, so it's another 9.5 hours. It ends at midnight tonight Pacific time. Save 20% on any order from my store. Enter BTS20 at checkout. Again, if you're watching this as an archive, this code will not work. It's only for those of you in the room. So I think I got through. Sai, if I missed any, I think I know who you are, and you obviously know my email address. So if I missed anything, you can email me. But I think I got to all the questions, and if I missed any, I apologize. But with all that, I want to thank everyone for turning out today. You'll remember this code ends at midnight tonight Pacific time. Also, as soon as the archive of this session is complete, you'll get an email with a link to view it, as well as the ebook that I referenced from the presentation. So thank you, and also stay tuned. I think you're going to love the webinar that we have lined up for next month. So stay tuned. Since you're on my mailing list, you'll hear about it. Everyone, thank you again. Everyone, stay safe, stay healthy, and thank you very much for your support. Have a great day.